Hi, I'm Sherry. Welcome to Know How Transfer. This is a tutorial about how to customize your shape, and it's primarily for advanced photographers. I recommend that you download the images that I'm going to work with today, give it a try yourself, or even better, use your own images, apply the settings we are going to go over, and see for yourself how it works on your own shots. So you already know that the shape slider affects the contrast, the sharpness slider, that's obvious, and you can tweak the highlights and shadow protection by unlocking the padlock and making those shifts. But what I want to concentrate on today is how shape works and what it's affecting. So by default, shape affects the color mode, the color boost, the sharpening mode, and the contrast mode. And it's in the contrast mode that the real magic happens because that's where we're blending the global and local contrast. By default, the blend is a predominantly global contrast blend. So the global contrast is predominant over the local in the default setting. Let's go into shape preferences and talk about what's in here. So live preview, I typically leave that on so I can see the effect right away. Color mode and advanced options. Let's reset to the default and begin by just using the basic setting and just as a starting point. So I'm going to go to this new image and hit run. It creates the layer and we see an immediate effect. Now let's go back into the gear button to get back to our shape preferences. And this time I'm going to just affect the color mode. Live preview I'm going to stick with. Color accuracy, let's try that and see what happens. I hit save. And then instead of the run button, I'm going to use the new button. And this gives me a brand new layer so I can compare the two. Okay, so before and after, before and after. You see this effect in the color, and it's not a good one. Honestly, I prefer to use the default setting here and just use color accuracy sometimes for landscape. So let's go back into our preferences after we ditch that layer and return to the default setting of luminosity. This time let's see what happens when we boost the color to 25. I hit save, new, and look at that big shift in the boost of color. It's more saturated. For some images, that's a great effect. It's really not good for this one, so ditch that again. Returning to my shape preferences, I'm going to get that color boost back to 15 where it started. And now let's see what happens when we move the high frequency from 2.5 to 5. Now this doesn't affect the amount of contrast, but what it's affecting is the kind of contrast. The low radius gives a lighter, thinner, unsharp mask, and a higher number here will give a more aggressive, heavier, unsharp mask effect. So I'll show you what I mean. I hit new to see what this effect is going to do. So before and after. And I like that new version. So I'll get rid of the previous one and let's go back into our preferences. And this time I'm going to affect the low frequency, mid frequency radius. This is the most important opportunity you have to really affect the customization between the global and the local contrast. So the higher value here in the low frequency, high radius is going to give you a more global predominant blend. That means that the kind of contrast that's very photographic, when we talk about contrast in general, that's the effect we're talking about, is a global contrast. So if I move the default from 256 to 64, then I'm going to create a blend in which the local contrast is predominant. The mid-frequency, you always want that to be in between these two. So I'll shift that to 16 and hit save. And now let's use the new button and look at the effect that that creates. Wow, so there's a nice shift, right? Look at that difference before and after. And this is where you use your own aesthetic, your own eye, the kind of look that you want to create. Figure out how this customized option creates the look that you love. So I'm going to go back here, look at all of it, and I'm thinking that I like the way his face looks in the top layer, but I prefer the way the rest of the image looks in that layer underneath. So as advanced photographers, you already know how to do this, but you can make a quick mask and use that to create the overall effect you want. So I'll get the best of both of these layers. So I'll put a quick mask on here. And the mask is black. So all I need to do is go in with a soft brush, paint his face out of the mask, and then it will reveal that effect that I like in this top layer. So go in quickly and paint that. And now you see the before and after in the mask and the before and after in the overall image. Yep, there we go. So I'm going to stop the corrections. But to review, let's go back and look at the settings we chose here. So we use the luminosity color mode in the default setting with a 15 color boost. We shifted our high frequency from 2.5 to 5. And then we changed the blend of the contrast by moving the blend to be predominantly one that highlights the local contrast over the global. And that 64-16 shift is what created a contrast with the local contrast being dominant. So what I encourage you to do is download the images we gave you, give it a try, use your own images as a place to really figure out how to create the look and feel that matches your own aesthetic. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and thank you for coming along.